In this video, I'll be comparing the MX Mechanical Mini from Logitech, the Apple keyboard with Touch ID, and the Microsoft Sculpt. So starting off with size, the largest of the three keyboards is actually going to be the Microsoft Sculpt. And as you can see, it has a little bit larger layout, but it's still pretty compact in size compared to the other two keyboards. The Apple keyboard is definitely going to be the smallest, and the Mechanical Mini is just a little bit larger. Next up is tactile feel. So out of these three keyboards, I noticed that the tactile feel of the Mechanical Mini was the best by Logitech. And the reason for that is it just has like a much better input and a much satisfying in feel. So when I'm using the Apple keyboard, I feel like it's usually like a hard in feel when I'm tapping. It's usually just a little bit harder compared to both these other keyboards. And a lot of people don't like that. For me personally, it doesn't really bother me that much, but I do notice an improvement with the Mechanical Mini. It's just a little softer in feel. You can feel those springs a little bit better, and that's something I wish that the Apple keyboard had. I'm going to say the Mechanical keyboard is actually better than the Microsoft Sculpt as well. The Microsoft Sculpt really isn't that bad, but there's just a huge difference with the Mechanical keyboard. It's just much softer, but you also notice that it's a little bit louder. But I definitely prefer that in general, just because it has just a nice, soft key input with those springs. Next up is connectivity. So using an Apple computer, I'm going to say that the Apple keyboard definitely is the fastest to connect. And it's also just really nice because you can use the Touch ID. If you have a password on your computer, this just makes it so much easier to kind of quickly log in. If you have like an Apple Watch, you can also get in the computer really quickly if you set it up with your computer. For anyone who's using a Mac, this is just like a simple way to kind of unlock the computer quickly, and you don't need a keyboard to do this. But it is really nice to be able to have the Touch ID right there on the keyboard. It just makes everything much faster. And if you use Apple Pay or anything like that, it's just a much easier process rather than just having to type in your password every time. And another thing that's really nice with connectivity with the Apple keyboard is if you ever have any issues with Bluetooth, you can just plug it into the computer and it's instantly connected, just like a wired keyboard. And that's something that you won't be able to find if you're using the Mechanical Mini or the Microsoft Sculpt. You can't just plug it in and start typing. You have to be paired by Bluetooth. And you know, with Bluetooth, sometimes we run into some connectivity issues. Now, with the MX Mini by Logitech, I did notice that the Bluetooth had like a slight lag in it at times, but it wasn't like a huge deal. If you are concerned about that, I would say definitely go with the Apple keyboard, but you are going to notice a slight lag with connectivity, and you're going to also notice that slight lag with the Microsoft Sculpt. Now, the cool thing about connectivity with the Mechanical Mini, and I think this is one reason to actually buy this keyboard, is because you can connect it with so many devices. Now, as I was creating this review today, I had some notes on my my phone, and I had some notes on my computer. So I would actually go back and forth between my computer and my phone to look up different things. So as I was writing this review, I needed to look at pricing, and it was really cool to just quickly click one button on the Mechanical Mini, and I was able to go to Amazon page to go ahead and just bring up the prices for these keyboards. And that can be super useful for anyone who uses like an iPhone or an iPad or just another computer in general. You can quickly switch between input devices, and you can't do this with many other keyboards. Logitech has kind of dominated this department. I know you can do this on a few other keyboards, but Logitech is the best one for switching between devices. And for connectivity, that is one huge reason to go with Logitech over these other keyboards. And then for connectivity with the Microsoft Sculpt, when using with an Apple computer, I had the biggest issue with it. I think that it's just kind of slow to connect, and then it's also not the best keyboard for Apple, and I talk about that in my other review right here. The Microsoft Sculpt in general is probably the best ergonomically, but it's not the best for connectivity unless you are using a PC. And for people that are using a PC, I would definitely recommend the Microsoft Sculpt as probably one of the best keyboards that you can get. All right, what about ergonomics? So the best keyboard out of all three of these is going to be the Microsoft Sculpt. The Microsoft Sculpt has the best ergonomics just because of the keyboard design and the layout and the wrist rests, and then also the split keyboard design. And that's something I talk a lot about in my other video. So definitely check that one out if you are interested in ergonomics for the Microsoft Sculpt. In general, I would say it's just the best ergonomically sound keyboard for most people. If you're using an Apple computer, it's probably not the best just because of the connectivity, and you can use other software to pair it with your Apple computer. Next up for ergonomics, I would say the Apple keyboard is the best just because of its low profile. It has a really low height, and that means you're not going to need a wrist rest. So my mouse pad actually covers most of my desk, and I can actually use that as a wrist rest for my palms when I'm using the Apple keyboard. So I don't need like a separate wrist rest. But if you're using the Logitech, it's really not that bad. Other than that, I feel like these keyboards are pretty similar. They're both really compact in size. They're about the same size. And for ergonomics, I would say they're going to be about split, with the Apple keyboard slightly better because of that lower profile. All right, so next up is Loudness. Which keyboard is the Loudness? I'm gonna say Mechanical Mini. It's just a lot louder in general because of the tactile input, and that is kind of intentional with the way they designed this keyboard. Now the next loudest is gonna be the Apple keyboard. It's not that loud in general, but you're gonna notice it just slightly louder than when using the Microsoft Sculpt. Now, another thing I should mention about the Microsoft Sculpt that I think is really nice is it has a separate numeric keypad that you can put on the left side. So for people that are right-handed, this is really nice because a numeric keypad really should be on the left side anyway if you're using the mouse on the right. Now, for people that are left-handed that use the mouse on the left, I would say just, you could get by with a standard keyboard. The Microsoft Sculpt isn't much better than a lot of these other keyboards that you can get in the same category. But for most people that are right-handed, the Microsoft Sculpt, the reason why it's so great is because you have a numeric keypad on the left hand, and that reduces shoulder motion. They can actually prevent having these MSDs related to repetitive motion. All right, next up is software. So right out of the box, I'm going to say the Mechanical Mini has the best software because the Mechanical Mini is actually designed for Mac. So when you open up the software, you can decide what command you want the key to do, which is really nice. And then just in general, if you want to open like a quick app, you can just assign that app to a button on the keyboard, which is super nice. And there's just a lot of other functionality that you can use with Logitech software. I think Logitech has kind of like the best software in general for keyboards just to make it more customizable. All right, so next up is price. So Apple and Logitech are actually the same price at $150. You can actually get a cheaper Apple keyboard if you don't have Touch ID. You can get these for around $100 from Apple, brand new. And the Microsoft Sculpt is about $80, so that's like way cheaper, but this is mostly going to be for people that are using a PC. So for anyone who's using a Mac, this keyboard is probably not your best option, but it's $80, so you can keep that in mind. And I would say that I think that the Apple keyboard is super nice because of the Touch ID. It's super fast. It's a really great keyboard. It's probably one of the best keyboards I've used. But for Mac users, I think the Mechanical Mini is really nice if you're switching between different computers or with an iPhone or an iPad. That's just a really good reason to get it because it's so seamless. You just click one button and you're able to pair it to another device pretty much instantly. So which keyboard do I think is best? If you are a PC user, I'm going to definitely say go with the Microsoft Sculpt. I think that's a great keyboard in general. But if you have multiple devices and you need to kind of switch back and forth, I think that Logitech is a valid option for anyone using a PC. For Mac users in general, I think that both these keyboards are great, the Apple keyboard or the Mechanical Mini. The Mechanical Mini is going to be the best for people just switching between multiple devices. If you're not switching between devices often, then I would just say go with the Apple keyboard because it's a great keyboard. It's compact, it's ergonomic, it has Touch ID, so it's going to connect really quickly to your devices. But you might want to just try out the Mechanical Mini because of how nice it is to be able to switch between devices. And I didn't realize that this is something that I wanted until I started using it. And I think there's a lot of people that would just benefit from using one keyboard for multiple devices anytime you're switching between an iPhone or an iPad or anything else. So I think that's something keep in mind as you're deciding on which keyboard you want to get. But for most people, I think just the Apple keyboard is a great keyboard, and it's probably the one I'm going to stick with. So I'll put all the links to these keyboards in the description below. Let me know your thoughts on these keyboards if you've used them, what your experience in general is with them. And I hope you like this video, and definitely subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.